Hello, everybody, and welcome to Detention, where we think about what we've done. Today, we are joined by Fiona Moriarty, an Irish professional triathlete based here in Portland, Oregon. Fiona grew up Irish dancing and playing soccer in Boston. She discovered that Irish dancers make pretty solid runners and turned to running while at Williams College, competing in the 400 and the 800.
Fiona continued her run career post-graduation with New Balance Boston before fleeing the East Coast for California and eventually making her way north to the Pacific Northwest. In 2018, Fiona placed first overall age grouper at 70.3 Victoria and third age grouper at 70.3 Coeur d'Alene, earning her pro card. In her free time, she enjoys baking, reading, and keeping her puppy Leaf from destroying things. Fiona, thank you so much for joining us in Detention.
Happy to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me.
So we always kick this off with the first question, or with the same question. Tell us, Fiona, is this your first time in detention?
I knew this was coming. This is a funny question because I, like many other triathletes, are, type A type people, and I hated getting in trouble, but I did once have to face the wall at recess for a week in a row. I think I was in second grade, because I punched Nicole Quishan in the face for calling me Fifi. So I don't regret it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I hate that nickname, and that was the start of it. So I did have to face the wall, but I was never in detention, per se.
Huh, this is
that
good.
That might be the best answer we've gotten yet to that question.
I did go to Catholic school for a lot of years, so corporal punishment was not something that they were afraid of. Staring at a brick for a week is about as good as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
How long was recess?
I want to say 35 to 40 minutes.
Ooh.
So when you're in second grade, that's a long time.
This is how endurance athletes are born, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for not just being the traditional professional triathlete responsive. No, I've never done anything wrong. What do you mean? Why would I do anything?
I mean, I never, that is such an aberration from the norm. I was definitely on the straight A student side of things. So getting in trouble is not something that I took any care to do, but man, I made it count when I really did it.
Sounds like this was the reason to do it.
That's good. Yeah, when you break the rules, you want to go big.
Yeah. Get punchy.
So Josh can be forewarned. Second question. This is another one of our sort of pro forma questions, but the past 9 to 12 months have been pretty rough. And even though they've been difficult, they've made room for a lot of change in people's lives. For us, it was starting the endurance school and launching this show. What has the past year made room for in your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think one of the big benefits, or what we're going to see for any athlete coming out of this, is how you use this time effectively or not. I give so much credit to Elliott for keeping my head on straight when I felt like everything was a disaster, because I had nothing to kind of look forward to or goals necessarily that were super concrete. So he let me explore other ways of testing myself. So this summer I was able to do the Timberline Trail, which is the 42-mile trail that goes around Mount Hood, with two other women. That was just an incredible experience, and on no other year would I ever take time in August to do something like that. And frankly, the time to build like a super solid base when it comes to running. Like you mentioned, I have a really long background in running, and I had a very codified, preconceived notion of what I thought an easy run should be, and what I thought my paces should be, and what I thought, like basically my whole understanding of running, it was pretty cemented in my head. So once everything kind of shut down, Elliott said, we're gonna go back to basics, and I mean, you're gonna start running slow. And I said, okay. And then I went out and, ran a easy run for an hour at like 7:30 pace, and was like, I did it. And he's like, no, that's not correct. I really needed to have a metric that wasn't my pace as a barometer for me hitting a workout correctly. And so I started training with a heart rate monitor, and I hated it with a passion for many months, but I don't think I would have given myself the permission to run that slowly for that long, and as a result actually get really strong and really fast by the time I actually did get to race. So very long-winded answer, but yeah, that's about it.
Can you say a little bit more about that? We obviously are not surprised to hear that feedback. We have a lot of athletes who really rely on pace and have trouble staying away from it. Can you tell us about some of the benefits that you saw by letting go of some of that?
Sure, and I will be full disclosure, it is not easy. And if you've ever read I think it's Good to Go or Great to Go, or
Yep.
it's one of the recent books about recovery that came out. And the author makes a note of Ryan Hall, the famous American marathoner, having for a while to follow a heart rate monitor on his easy runs because he was also running too fast. So it was like this chronic cycle of injury and fatigue that perpetuated because he was never running easy enough. And I have heard so many triathletes say this, when I was coming up in the age grouper of I think Jesse Thomas always said, I never see age groupers taking their easy days easy enough. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And of course I run my easy run slow enough. And coming from a system like a track-based upbringing where you go out on a run and everyone ends up competing with each other, whether or not you try to, that's every day. So I never knew really what easy felt like. And so Elliott and I worked together to find what my heart rate should be on an easy run, which for me is anything under 150, and that beats per minute. And that was an educated guess. And the first couple of runs, I will never forget it, just thinking I am the slowest person in America. I don't understand. I'm not even sweating. This is a joke. I was running with Josh, who is my partner, and we do a lot of our workouts together, and he was not just inching, just blowing me off the street, which as a competitive person is just heartbreaking. So I had to stop running with him for a little while so that I could respect my own program. And I would get so upset, emotionally upset, that I would raise my own heart rate and have to run slower because I couldn't keep up to him. So that cool 8:30 to 8:45 pace was becoming 9-minute pace because I was starting to cry. So I needed to follow something very specific to not follow my pace. I needed to have that data. And otherwise, I don't train with, I'm not somebody that is super, tied to watts on a bike computer or anything else. But this particular measurement for me was the difference in being able to run 60 miles, 50 miles a week injury-free, let's say, and running 35 with a workout and having, niggles and all sorts of stuff throughout the year. So, yeah.
I'm so glad to hear it.
This is jumping ahead to racing stuff, but it's pertinent. Having that information in training, sometimes that comes across. Did you also use heart rate? Did you also use heart rate when you were at Florida in your racing?
It was a question that we really thought about because I don't ride with any sort of heart rate measurement. I don't give myself a lot of credit with things, but when it comes to something that I'm good at judging at, it's usually my perceived effort. And because of that, Elliott is very attuned to that and wants me never to lose that ability. So we didn't want to jeopardize that in the sense that when I race, I really want to race. It's me in there, not me looking at my watch. However, we decided, and I tested out a couple of days beforehand, having my heart rate strap on underneath my kit so that I could swim with it and that it wasn't going to chafe. And then I was fine. So I on the day of, I had it on. I didn't look at it, obviously, during the swim. During the swim, I just tried to survive. It was a dumpster fire. Yeah. And then during the bike, I didn't even put the field on my bike computer. So it wasn't relevant. It was collecting information, but I wasn't looking at it. And then on the run, it was the best thing in the world to have, not because I was paying attention to it, but because I knew I was absolutely crushing it based on what my heart rate was, how fast I was running. and then the difference between me stopping to get aid at aid stations would bring my heart rate down by about 10 beats. And so I was able to run these big chunks of miles at like a 155 heart rate, running 7 minutes per mile, because I could see that, and I knew if my like easy heart rate was 150 and below, like I just ran for 14 miles, 7 minutes per mile at a 155 heart rate. Like, this is going well. So I had no framework to reference for other Ironmans, but I did know how I should be running and like how I felt and what was, you know, what my data was saying. I wasn't really using it to force anything, but just to give me more confidence.
I think
I
I would.
love that answer.
Yeah, that's that's fantastic. I kind of want to stay with the Ironman Florida now that we're in it. So you mentioned that the swim was a dumpster fire. And I know that like you, like many triathletes, were out of pools for a long time and doing a lot of swimming in open water. How did that impact your experience there? And how did you kind of like get your head ready for such a big race at, you know, with that kind of training and lead up?
I mean, it's a fabulous question. So I spent the summer, I was in the Willamette probably 3 to 4 times a week. I started swimming, I looked back at, you know, old photos. I started swimming in Vancouver. Gosh, where is it, Chris? The place that we swim at, the lake.
Oh, Swan Island. Oh, Vancouver Lake, yeah.
Started swimming there for, you know, the early months of the year. It was so cold, and I need a root canal on one of my teeth. This is relevant, I promise. But it was so cold that the cold water would get in there, and like the pain afterwards was just like monumental. I couldn't speak. I'd like call into work meetings afterwards and just have to listen because of the like cold water. I can't forget it because tooth pain is real. But I would swim there 2 or 3 times a week in March, but it was so like nasty. It wasn't something I looked forward to. But once it warmed up, and one of my friends here, Whitney Dawson, is somebody that I was swimming with regularly, so at least I had someone to go with, which made it easier. She's a great swimmer, so I always felt like at least if I have someone else that can kind of push me, I'm more likely to go and to invest in the experience of being there and not just, you know, go and paddle my way up and down the river. And then I did not feel extremely confident going into the swim of this. I did have about a month of swims underneath me at a pool here. I go up to Washington to swim. And so I had a couple of workouts. I knew I wasn't like totally dead in the water. And we had done, the sessions are limited to an hour. And so I think pools in Portland were actually open at the time as well. And so I'd done a couple of sessions where it was basically like a warm up of 100 yards, 200 yards, 3 by 1,000, or like, you know, really longer stuff, because that for me is something I'd never had to do. I had to be able to feel that kind of misery of swimming hard for a long time, at least in some circumstance, before an Ironman. And on top of it, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but like, you know, when Arizona got canceled, that took 2.5 to 3 weeks of my build kind of off the table. So not only am I in a race that I've never done, now I have 2.5 weeks less to prepare. So I think it took a little bit of the pressure off as well, in that I couldn't have any expectations because I'd never done the thing. I never raced as a pro, and now I am doing an ocean swim in a place that is a 2-lap swim. So like, please tell me what number of additional weird things I could have about it. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, a lot of adversity can actually end up becoming a helpful thing.
And then the day of, or the day before, you know, the water was warm enough that it was in a wetsuit legal swim. So like, I'm trying to get more used to saying that like I am a swimmer, because relative to the rest of the world, like I am a good swimmer, but relative to other very, very strong swimmers, I'm like a medium second pack kind of hopeful. And so I just looked at somebody like Meredith Kessler or Kelsey Withrow or Kat Matthews, and they're like super swimmers. So I knew and had the previous experience of getting roasted by putting myself in the wrong spot on the starting line. But like, those are not the people I need to go for. Find my own medium okay swimmers and like hang on for dear life, because it was going to be super choppy, and it absolutely was.
Yeah. Yeah, that swim is so it can go either way. It can be like this like wonderful like placid experience, or it can just be it can be it seems to change every year. It seems to change lap to lap.
Yeah, that's for sure.
um, so like tell us a little bit about the second half of the race. Like, the first half of any Ironman is just sorting things out. But in the second half of the race, it becomes clear that you're having a good day. Um, Tell us a little bit about like what was your self-talk like? What was going through your head? Like what was that internal narration? Um, what was happening with that internal narration?
Oh God, it's thinking back on the day still kind of gives me chills because it was as many things could have gone right that did go right. Um, and I give Josh my a lot of credit because it's not that I don't prepare for things. I don't do it as thoroughly as he does. And again, I had no framework for preparation. So then the day before, first of all, the election is happening. So like you're trying to push off the like future of the country and focus on something that is completely only relevant to you. And we're laying out all of my nutrition, in the living room, and I'm, half paying attention to Josh, but mostly paying attention to the TV. And he was like, no, no, Fiona, you have to focus. Like, we need to just talk this through. And he, looked at the wind for the past couple of days in Panama City Beach were super windy in the later afternoon. And the bike course was basically a big circle where, you were heading into, in theory, the wind for 40 miles, getting a little bit of a turnaround, then going to have it at your back. So that was, a nice little chunk there where you weren't going to be having to push as hard. And out and back where you were into the wind, and then going back was like mostly okay until the last 5 miles, the longest 5 miles of my life. But because he had brought all of that up, I had broken it down in my head of like, okay, the first 40 miles, I know I need to not overextend myself. I found a pack of people that like, I knew when I came in from the swim that I wasn't the last person, and was like, woohoo, yeah, you did it. Like, good job. You aren't the last person here. And so I got this is kind of sad, but I got a little bit of a boost from that. And I got out of transition and just knew that first couple of miles, like my heart rate was up. I just needed to drink stuff and eat stuff, and that was fine. But once I got out on the road, I just knew that like I felt okay. And that I wasn't going to do anything stupid until until I at least made it to that turnaround. So I found other women that I was racing against. There was probably, four of them that were strung along in a, legally distanced line. So in that scenario, much like we saw at Daytona, if I was going to pass one, I was going to pass them all. And why would I ever, going into a headwind, try to take on four people? I probably would have extended myself up to like, 240, 250 watts. Anyways, on the turnaround, I passed a bunch of people and just knew that I felt great. I had, I had broken it down that every X number of minutes that I was eating something, drinking something. And then just got entangled in this whole mess of age group men that were like drafting off of each other in these nice little clumped packs. Like, kudos to you guys who made it absolutely impossible for me to get around. And the front women were so far ahead that like I had no chance of catching them, so I was really alone. It was me and a bunch of age group dudes, and that part was pretty miserable. But once, like I said, the last 5 miles were into a straight headwind. I was putting out 230 watts and going 14 miles an hour, and I did not care. I just wanted to get off my bike so badly. At that point, I know you guys have both done these kind of things, and you just get to the point where you're just like, well, shit, please just get me off my bike. And I remember feeling really happy because when I took my helmet, and I got a really big laugh out of this, I took my helmet off in transition, and I had a giant dragonfly, like the size of a baseball, stuck in my visor. It had just like lodged in there, and it made me laugh so hard that I had like transported this creature probably for 60 miles. And I didn't feel a thing because you're just like so in the zone and so concentrating, and the poor little guy like was just fluttering around in my visor. And then the run portion was just like, I knew I felt good. You chatted with Elliott, who told me to walk the first 4 aid stations, and I just rolled my eyes and was like, yeah, whatever. I will do that, but then I'm just going to run my race after that. And the course is basically like 2 loops, half marathon per loop. And I just slowly but surely picked people off in terms of like whoever was in front of me. I just was running my own race. I wasn't paying real attention to how fast other people were going. And then I saw Josh at some point along the way, and he said, Renee Kiley is just ahead of you. And I was like, what? She was in 5th place, which would make me 6th place. Like, that blew my mind because I knew I was somewhere in the middle, and I didn't realize that I had made it that far forward. And I just told him to shut up. He was like, don't tell me that. I don't want to think about it. I just need to keep running, and I don't want to change anything. And about 2 or 3 minutes later, I was running through an aid station, and I saw Renee walking and going backwards. So I just, I have one of these moments of like, holy shit, I'm in a podium spot. I have so many miles left to go. I just can't screw this up. So I just kept cruising until I don't think I felt really, pain per se. Like, my left quad kind of started to go at about 23 miles, but at that point, what's another 3? So you just kind of suck it up and keep going. And yeah, that was about it.
Amazing. We have a question from chat from Nick, who wants to know if you got any feedback from the Instagram post about the age group men drafting.
I did. I got a lot of feedback about that, mostly positive.
Leif.
I think the male guy is here.
He just wants to be on screen.
Yeah, he really just wants to show up. I got a lot of support from other pros, other women. Like, that really was both heartwarming and like disappointing, because it just goes to show that my experience is not unique. I don't really, I guess after the fact, I felt more confident about my decision to say something, because I don't know why it's not so discussed. That it's just such a prevalent thing, especially if you're a woman and you're strong. It seems like the aggression towards you is like pretty palpable as you start riding through, more guys. And like, I don't say this to sound like an angry feminist, but I do think that there is something that needs to change when it comes to men accepting women's place as just as significant and important out there on the road. Because with cycling more so than anything else, it feels pretty palpable, and it's happened to me more than once. So I did get some, comments from guys saying, it's not all age group men, or you must have done something to instigate this, which is not the kind of language that I want to respond to. I think it's really unfair, and it puts the blame on me, which is, I think.
What could you possibly have done? Like,
right. You're getting passed by a girl.
Like, what in the world could you have been doing in that context other than riding a bicycle? I cannot believe it.
So yeah,
Crazy.
That was, and I still think about it a lot, and I wish it hadn't happened, because it did color the day a little bit for me. But I will say, at the end of the day, that guy and I, the one that I specifically had some words with, he's a really strong runner, and we passed each other on the race course. And, when you're in something like that, you just want to have the best experience for yourself. And I just like gave him a wave and a smile just to say, like, whatever the hell happened out there, I have no ill feelings towards you. I understand things get heated in the moment. I understand that this is a thing that is much bigger than the two of us. And I want that guy to have the best day imaginable, and I want to have the best race imaginable. So I'm going to let the shitty feelings go and just like wave it off, because that was what I needed to do to like get my job done on the day. So interesting question. It is something that, I still feel like I have to improve over time.
Letting go of that, though, is how you don't sink your race.
But yeah, I mean, it is such a prevalent problem. They really need to do something to change it. Races like Cozumel, it couldn't be worse. 3-lap course, flat, windy, some different attitudes about about all of these social subjects, even more so than in America. I mean, it's really frustrating.
And you have to think everyone has to take these things into their own hands, in the sense that like you are responsible for your behavior on the race course. A marshal is not going to be there 24/7. It is not Daytona. It's not such a tightly closed course that people are there all the time. You're on a stretch of Podunk Road in the middle of rural Florida. Like, it's up to you to be on your best behavior. If you are drafting off of someone, and sure, things happen, and you're like, you run up to somebody's zone and it's close, like, it happens, but don't sit on somebody's wheel. Don't yell at a woman because she's passing you. Don't, anyways, I could go on for this for hours, but like, it's just something that needs to be addressed at a bigger scale. And I hope that Ironman spaces out pros and age groupers. In this particular case, they collapse the race even more so than usual. So the fast age group men started, I think, 2.5 minutes after the pro women. So under what circumstance is that ever going to be successful? I'm not quite sure. So yeah.
Ironman wasn't in your plans last year, and then it was in your plans, and then your Ironman got changed. So do you think that this is a distance that you will make a central part of your yearly racing, or is the plan still to kind of focus on the 70.3 distance?
You and I both would like to know that. I mean, the best right now, because Ironman dominates Ironman as the brand, not necessarily the full distance, dominates like what it means to be a successful long distance athlete, which means the coverage of athletes is best at Kona, which means that that's where you kind of want to be. And 70.3s as a thing are it's easier to do more of them per year. I was wiped for a month after Florida. You cannot do that many in a year. You cannot build in that way. You cannot have that razor sharp focus for that long. So like, it is a bigger commitment. I think the fact that I managed to pull off the race that I did means that I am capable of doing more of them. And I liked a lot of parts about it. One of the things that I really appreciate about the way Elliott coaches me is that the 70.3 training is not that different from an Ironman, other than that, like, you have a couple of days where the ride might be 6 hours instead of 4 or something. But I think the plan for now is to just, train for sharpness for a 70.3, and then if it makes sense to target an Ironman, we'll, lengthen some of those things out. But being fast and resilient is important for a 70.3 all the way up to a full. So that's kind of the plan for now.
So as someone who's been able to step up successfully and have that kind of like elusive, gutsy, and successful Ironman, especially first Ironman, what advice do you have for other athletes who are considering stepping up their distance?
Oh gosh, this feels laughable that I'm being asked for advice for this.
You did do a good job, Fiona.
and honestly, like, yeah, I mean, you're in such a small population of somebody who had a successful first Ironman.
I think a couple of things. I had low to no expectations of a particular time or anything going into it. So I wasn't thinking that, I came out of the swim with an almost 70-minute swim, which, if I'm being realistic with myself, is kind of heartbreaking, because if I wanted to be around an hour, which is like what a reasonably competitive swimmer would do, and I probably would have tanked the rest of my day just being like, well, I had a shitty swim and there's no way I'm coming back from that. So the first thing I would say is, like, be open with yourself about what those times and stuff are, because it's way more about how you feel on the day than it is about hitting a particular time or something. Having little goals throughout the day really made me at least break it up into chunks. So like, I had done a 5-hour ride a couple of weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks before the Ironman. Let's be serious, I didn't have that much time. So I knew that I could hold about anywhere between 190 to 215 watts for 5 hours. And so realistically, I was pretty cooked around, 4:45, climbing that one of those hills back up and over. What did I go up? I think I went up McNamee, or the backside of that, going back up to Portland, and wanted to shoot myself because it was really, really hard and it was hot. But I knew that I was capable of holding that. So anywhere around that would have been fine. But what Elliott always says to me is, it's not about the watts you're holding, it's about how fast you're going. So staying as aero as possible for me was one of my goals, and like keeping my head steady, making sure that I'm not undercutting on my fueling. So okay, let me be more concise. Finding small goals in each part of the race helped me stay focused, and learning how to eat. I would say that Elliott instilled in me the fear of God when it came to like eating enough in the couple of weeks before training for this, because I had never had to eat for an Ironman, and I have never been capable of eating as much as I did in this couple of weeks beforehand. But yeah, I just opened my mind to what it meant to being really fueled and having the stuff that I needed to get the job done in the day. So
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think that people hear that on a abstract level, but getting like a concrete description of what your fueling and eating looks like before that change and after that change.
So here's a perfect example, and I think something that we all do sometimes is, you're on a 2 or 3 hour ride and you have about 45 minutes to go, and you're like getting close to home, and the reward of having like a really delicious meal after that, or something really tasty, is like pretty close, and you kind of feel bonky, or like not bonky, you kind of feel like you're hungry, but you don't want to have another gel, or you don't want to have another piece of sports nutrition. Those are the moments that in an Ironman build, like, you are blowing it if you don't take that gel. You are blowing your next day. You are blowing 2 days from now if you don't take the gel then and there. And on those
check is in the mail.
And it's especially when you're swifting or like, an easy run or something, like, those are the times when you have to be diligent, because it's not fun. It's not fun to take a gel when you're like 90 minutes into a 2 hour Zwift ride. It's not fun to take a gel when you're 30 minutes into a 50-minute easy run. But man, do you just reap the rewards of it. When I had some of my best runs in this build, like 18 to 20 mile runs with, X chunk of it at tempo pace, which, by the way, is not a thing that means something different for everybody. It is a specific range of your heart rate where you are working in a particular way, which I had to learn. Thank you very much. That's something that is like, a bit of a hot button issue. But yeah, I was able to execute those runs because I had done a better job of fueling. And so, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Oh, and taking a hand flask with you on any run that is longer than 35 minutes or something. Like, I had scratch in my bottle, I wish I could go back to my 22 or 23-year-old self that was ripping 16-mile long runs with absolutely no fuel, no water, no nothing, and I could do it because I was stupid. And like, you just figure out a way to get it done. But I always felt terrible, and my training always suffered for it. So yeah, did a lot of
you get in that like sawtooth pattern of like good run, bad run, good run, bad run. And like something you said earlier tonight was that you would have been able to string together like 50 to 60 mile weeks on the run, because you're running at an easy pace, because you're fueling, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's what I do in a month, not what I do in a day.
And those hero workouts, like I think of the track days when, I would go and crush 2 miles at tempo, 8x200 uphill, 3x400 on the track, and then a mile of tempo home, and feel like a goddamn hero, and then eat absolutely nothing, and then die for the rest of the week. So like that, I knew how that went, and this was so much different. And I can honestly tell you, I did not do a single track workout, and I have not done a track workout in 2 years. But I have done strides at the end of my runs, and I have done some workouts not like get the turnover, get the speed going, but it's because my base mileage is so strong and that I'm healthy that like, I'm able to pull off a reasonably good marathon at the end of an Ironman.
So tell us more about the day-to-day nutrition. I think anyone who follows your Instagram knows that food is a big part of your life. Can you tell us about how Ironman changed the way that you were fueling in breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And what are you making these days that you like?
So I give Kyla a ton of credit. She's a nutritionist that I work with, and if anyone ever wants to chat with me about her, like I can't say enough good things. I've had other folks ask me, like people that I used to run with, when they see me now, they're like, what made the big change for you, and how did you go from being like a decently okay runner to someone that is, at the top of my sport? And it's, to me, nutrition is like the thing that really changed my life. And I don't say that lightly, but when you are eating the right things to get you to go places, it's a light bulb moment. You're not dragging ass through workouts. A typical day for me, let's say if I have especially a big bike workout, or I'll start with a swim in the morning. I'm a big proponent of toaster waffles, gluten-free toaster waffles, because they're dead simple and I digest them really easily, and it takes me about 2 to 3 minutes in the morning to throw two of them in the toaster, and some coffee, and then I'll go swim. And when I come home, I usually have second breakfast of some kind. If I'm on top of it, it's often some kind of baked thing that I've made, like a muffin, or I make a lot of different kinds of bars, or granola. And then I usually have another session, whether it's a run or a ride after that. I often make oat waffle, so it's basically like quick oats, eggs, and almond milk with cinnamon, and I'll mix that up and then throw that in our actual like Belgian waffle maker, and it comes out looking just like a regular old waffle that you would make at a Howard Johnson or something. And I'll put almond butter and maple syrup on top of that before a big ride. And lunch I think is the biggest difference between Fiona of now and Fiona of her 20s. Because when you have a desk job, the thing is to get up from your desk and go to your fast casual salad place and eat a pile of kale with a lot of really good healthy vegetables on top of it. And I, again, would love to go back and shake myself, because then I would have track workouts at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and the sheer misery of having a sensitive stomach, and you ate a pile of kale, and now you have no actual carbohydrates in your system. Like, we can all do the math. It was never a good situation. And so I was always wondering why, like, I could never pull out these really good evening workouts. And it was because I wasn't fueling at lunch appropriately. So now I usually have a regular old turkey sandwich, or like something really simple, especially if I have a run in the afternoon. And yeah, dinner I'm making, I basically cook all of the things in my house. Josh, if you're listening,
yes.
I love you, but I'm definitely of our house. And I love to make fresh pasta and all sorts of anything carbohydrate-y, really. Usually with lean protein, whether it's chicken, or last night I made Greek meatballs or fish or whatever. And I love having people over for dinner. So that's probably the thing that I miss the most about regular times, is having people in my house and feeding them. So.
You're making it all sound really easy, because you haven't told us that like all of these things that you're talking about, like sandwiches and fresh pasta and stuff like that you're gluten-free. So if you could like dive a little deeper into that and talk, so highly sensitive stomach, gluten-free, but you're still able to like get in the food that you're eating and race effectively. What have you had to change from probably like a standard effective triathlon diet to like a gluten-free, and one where that your stomach is sensitive?
First of all, it wasn't always that way. Like most people, autoimmune things really start to trigger when you're in your late teens, early 20s. And I used to be a pastry chef. So I was working, ironically, at a bakery called Flour, and I had,
So good.
it's so ironic, it's painful. And I was at the time running really seriously, and I was coaching track at Harvard. And so I would, put on my chef whites at 4 o'clock in the morning and take the train in, run from the train in my chef clothing to work, work for, on my feet for 7-8 hours, and then run over to Harvard, which was 3.5 miles away, and then run at practice with the men's team and then go home. So like, I when I think about that, I have absolutely no idea how I did it, but what I did learn from that time was like, what it takes to make truly great pastry, how these things come together. For example, like, and it's always something that I've been interested in. I for a while, I took biochemistry classes. I thought I was going to get my master's degree in biochem to look at, gut microbiomes and how that affects who we are and how we like our emotions. And I have always been interested in that stuff. And so what I saw is that there's so much chemistry and interesting biology to baking and to pastry. Like that really got to me. So I have taken that interest, and really when I, found out I was sick, I started really it was about a month in the making of just feeling tired all the time. I was so lethargic, and then one day I like practically passed out at work and was just like really just sick, and finally had to step away from my job and all of that. And what I was able to take and learn from all of that is like, refrigerating doughs. So after you make cookies, you probably shouldn't just bake them off right away, because the temperature change is what allows things to structure appropriately. So with gluten-free stuff, it is way more important to think about how things come together, because it just doesn't work the same as regular pastry. So that allowed the baking stuff to really come through, and how I have used that as a way to change my own diet is like, okay, well, if I can't have standard bread, I will figure out how to make my own. Or if I can't have, regular chocolate chip cookies, they're like the thing I love the most in this world. Like, I'm going to make the world's best damn chocolate chip cookie and eat them whenever the hell I want, because it's something that I value. So I just have to set myself up for success when it comes to like giving myself time to make that stuff on a Saturday or Sunday, freezing it, and then using it ad hoc as I need it. And I've certainly gotten that down, over the years of trial and error, and a lot of reading how other people are, kind of testing the boundaries of what's possible with like gluten-free foods and things. And it's gotten way easier like now versus 10 years ago. So that's really long-winded, but yeah, that's kind of how we got there.
We do love a long-winded answer. Mm-hmm. It makes our job so much easier.
Jenny would like some recipes also.
Well, Jenny is lucky. I'm working on a cookbook with Kyla of all of the things that I make all of the time, and that I really think are missing from people's lives. So like, the cinnamon buns and the things that normally are associated with only being for people that can eat wheat. I like making things that people can't tell are gluten-free. I think it usually comes with a stamp of people being like, okay, this thing is either going to taste like a rock or a small turd. So I prefer to make things that you can't really tell are gluten-free. So that's kind of the benchmark for success.
Very cool.
And is the cookbook going to come out? I mean, knowing that creative things take a lot of time.
Well, she approached me, I want to say in October or November with the idea, and it's always been something that I've been stewing on, and I owe her like 1 or 2 more recipes, and then it will be coming out. The last thing that I'm working on perfecting is sourdough bread. So like, of course, like everyone started making bread during COVID, and like that's wonderful, but it is so different when you're trying to make gluten-free sourdough bread, because you have to make a gluten-free starter, and it just, for those that don't know things about gluten, the reason that it works for bread is that the gluten is the protein structure that allows it to actually rise. And so when you don't have that, you have to find ways to inject air basically into the bread without the protein. So it has resulted in a lot of wasted flour, because like, when that stuff isn't edible, it is a literal rock. Mm-hmm. It is a wet rock, and it's sad. So I just need a little bit more time to finish that one, and then I want to make sure it's perfect before I put it up for people to use. So hopefully in the next month.
Cool.
There's some really good looking things on your Instagram, so I'm pretty excited about that. We have a good question from Amanda. She wants to know she also says that you are her spirit animal. She wants to know how you tune out the noise of everyone else's socialized training and stick to your plan with confidence, aka does social media ever get in your head?
Yeah, that is, I have to be super careful of that because Elliott is not someone, and I think there are some coaches out there that are like, they do really have workouts that crush athletes, or that, like, you can really put it on as a benchmark for your athlete as, like, wow, I finished this extraordinarily tough day and, like, I am wrecked. That is just not what my coach does. Like, it is more along the lines of, sure, there are hard days and there are days that I have to be super laser focused on what I'm doing to get the most out of it. But I think Elliott nor myself believe that I am winning anything by winning a day of training. Like, I have to win every day of training at like a B plus to an A plus range in order to race at an A plus. And I find when I get jealous, or like, look at what other people are doing and say, oh God, why aren't I swimming 5K, or why aren't I running X, Y, and Z? It's because those are the hero workouts that make me feel like I am not doing enough. But what I can then say to myself is, like, I am showing up on race day and getting the most out of myself. I saw folks that I looked at in the build up to Florida thinking, like, holy shit, how am I ever going to catch up to that person? Or how am I ever going to stay with them? And I raced better than they did. Like, I just have to remind myself that getting the most out of myself on race day is what matters, and it's not a Tuesday at 4 p.m. when somebody is doing mile repeats on the track, because that's just not how I operate. So it's a valid question, and I have to remind myself I'm not perfect, and I just have to trust my training and trust my coach. So.
You do all of this on top of actually living a like real professional existence. Like, you have a job, and along with writing a cookbook and training full time, it's a lot to balance. What are some of your tactics for keeping your shit together?
I would say it comes off the rails every once a month or so. Like, I have a good old cry every month.
It's pretty good.
It's not terrible, and frankly, crying actually feels good sometimes. I I have to optimize for when I work best, and I will give Salesforce. So I work as a content designer at Salesforce, so I write, and I am blessed with a job that allows me um, to not work a traditional desk 9 to 5. So I am at my computer when I'm needed in meetings, and I get my stuff done. I moved up a level in my job this year. I am performing well. My team just got an award. Like, I know I am good at my job. I just also know that I have to time box things effectively, because if I don't, I either my workouts will encroach onto my job life, and then I will not be performing up to snuff at that, or vice versa. And I think when you step up to that next level of athletics, when you are trying to be an elite athlete, the sacrifices come when you have to stay true to your training. If you want to perform, you figure out a way to get it done. It just, like, now I have to be as vigilant about rest and recovery as I am about my workouts and stuff. So, like, sure, it's been really easy to say no to social obligations this year because there aren't any. But for the most part, I mean, on a year-to-year basis, it's not like I'm going out and doing extra stuff, after work. I work, I train, I take my dog to the park 2 times a day, and that's about as wild and crazy as it gets. So, like, it does lead to a very monk-like existence, but yeah, it just means that I have to be very careful and very deliberate about what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and not letting either of my two jobs kind of encroach on the other.
How do you make that happen? Do you sit down on a Sunday and, like you said, time box everything? Is there a journal involved, a big calendar? Like, what's the structure behind the successful behavior?
I mean, with swimming, especially now, it always has to be scheduled. So, like, I think it was almost harder to time box swimming, especially because I would kind of drag my feet with getting to the pool, unless I was either swimming with people or, had something specific in mind. So you're always going to be swimming early, or at least in my world, I'm always going to be swimming early, and get that done before before my job, and then I know on Sunday what my week is going to look like. I make sure I look at my schedule. Now I order groceries on Sundays so that they're delivered to my door, and I'm not, because I am the one doing the grocery shopping. I plan my meals and stuff for the week so that I don't get stuck on a Wednesday or a Thursday going, well, like, okay, I've just had meetings all day long. I have trained for 2 hours. Leaf needs to go to the park. I also need to make dinner. Like, that's when the crying happens. So the planning on the Saturday or Sunday prevents the like Wednesday, Thursday meltdown. Otherwise, it just becomes one giant shit show, and like I can't handle it.
So what about routine? What role does routine play in your life with so much like that is able to be structured, as needed? What kinds of routines do you have that keep you focused?
That's a good question. I think having my schedule. So I would say, like, if I look back at myself from prior to Elliott coaching me, I worked at a more month scale. Like, I was on a boilerplate training plan, basically, that I could see out for the month what I had. What has been interesting about my evolution as an athlete and with a coach is that I get my plan on a weekly basis. So Elliott takes into account my life, what I have. If I have a really busy week at work, we definitely dial back my training a little bit, not in intensity, but in hours. So like the extra stuff is taken out. That kind of live approach to my sport life is the only way that it works. And routine wise, this year has actually been the opposite of routine driven, because everything has just been so unpredictable, which was really, really hard for me to take in, especially at the start. Like, we're all very driven by schedules and things having to come together at just the right time to make it work. So when nothing was going according to plan, and when I couldn't rely on my job doing the normal things or sport doing the normal things, like, that's when you get the like error does not compute. Like, my brain just wouldn't function. So I had to decide for myself, like, okay, I will do my best to swim these 4 days a week, and I made that commitment to drive 20 minutes to a pool or whatever it was. Like, I had to create my own schedule with Elliott, so that I just revolved my life around that because it was the one thing I could control. I think on normal years, it's a lot easier to like say, okay, I'm swimming with a group Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then everything kind of rolls out from there. Wednesdays for me are my big bike days, so I know that I'm not doing strength on Tuesday because then I will sabotage myself for Wednesday. Like, that kind of stuff is easier, I think, in a normal year to plan, but this year has been less routine oriented and more like collaborative and live planning on a week-to-week basis because of the shit show that is 2020/2021.
So you have a slightly non-standard athletic background for long course endurance triathlon. First of all, you're a soccer player, which awesome, but 400 and 800 on the track. And that is almost as far away from long distance triathlon as you can get before you're into the 200 and the 100. What did those events sort of tell you about endurance athletics and training? And what have you taken from that experience as a track runner into your long course triathlon career?
Oh, that's super interesting. Well, the 400 is like as at the nth degree of pain as a painful race experience as you can get, and then until you get to the 800, it's just like taking the same thing and lengthening it. So I kind of feel like it's a 70.3 in an Ironman, where like I thought the 70.3 was bad, and then I did an Ironman and was like, oh, this is actually it right here. It is, the training is almost a way as poetically similar as it can be. I mean, in the sense that you have some easy runs in there and you're doing, a couple of days a week, you're doing base work. There are hills for strength. I had a very traditional coach who would much rather, tell us to run up, this hill. It was called Blair Hill in Williamstown, and it had 3 bumps to it. The first one was like medium steep. The second one was steep AF and really short. And then the last one was long and steep. And like, as we got fitter throughout the season, it was 3 or 4 by Blair, and then 5 or 6 by Blair, and then until you puke at the top, that by Blair. And like, that kind of training and strength has totally translated to me as a long endurance athlete, because it just goes to show the development over the season of like, don't expect yourself in January, February to be the same person that you are October, November. Like, don't, and at least with Elliott, it's like, don't look at the flashy stuff of what other people are doing. Like, that coach instilled in me the basics of hard work and just patience, because, you know, you weren't running a 2:07 in January. You were running a 2:07 at the very last meet of the year, or a 2:05, you know, at the very last meet of the year when you were in your peak top form. So it taught me about seasonal development. It taught me, you know, how to keep going when everything in your brain and your body is telling you, like, I am literally on fire and I'm dying. It's just in a much faster cadence. So, yeah, it's the dedication to routine and to day-to-day stuff, and to workouts that cause you nothing but misery, or are just hard from beginning to end, and showing up on a day-to-day basis. That is all the same. It doesn't matter if it's a 400 or a race that takes you 10 hours. It's bringing your best self every day that you can to make those 2 or 3 performances in the year be like exclamation points rather than just kind of flat lines. You just have to like put the work in throughout the year to get there.
I can't think of a better note to end on, because that's fantastic. Fiona, congratulations on your first Ironman. Congratulations on 5th place in your first pro race. This has been an extraordinary year, and we're all cheering for you as next season starts to shape up. I can't believe this has been an hour. This is amazing. I feel like we just started. But yeah, thank you for coming on. For everybody who's out there tonight, don't forget to come back tomorrow morning for Yoga with Amy BT at 7:30. And yeah, thank you, Fiona. This has been absolutely super, super fun. I can't wait for your cookbook to come out. Make sure you let us know about it so that we can make sure to get it out to all of our people as well, because I know there are a lot of people who are out there tonight who would really like to have some gluten-free baked goods in their lives.
Sounds good. Thank you guys so much.
All right.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.